Next dinim we're going to learn. Rafi. The next thing we're going to learn here is kibbud av v'em. The dinim of kibbud av v'em, honoring your father and mother. This applies, by the way, whether they're alive or they passed on already. There's still a mitzvah in the Torah in the Aseret Dibros. Kabed es avicha v'esimecha l'man yarichon yamecha. So it says, not only that, but the Torah likens honoring and having respect and awe for parents equal to having honor and awe of Hashem. Okay, because it says kabed es avicha v'esimecha, and it also says kabed es Hashem. You have to honor Hashem. By parents it says ish imei va'aviv tiro. You have to have fear for your parents. By Hashem it also says as Hashem alakecha tira. So bottom line is a person has a chiyuv min ha-Torah to honor parents, and we'll soon see how far halacha says the honor of parents have to go. But there's a whole shaila in halacha over here about calling parents by their first name. So in Shulchan Aruch it says, in your day it says, you're not allowed to call parents by their first name. And they ask in that, we find in the Gemara many times, Abba Chalafta, my father Chalafta. So they ask, how can, it says in halacha, you're not allowed to call a parent by your first name, and he called his father Abba Chalafta. So the Gemara answers that halacha answers, because he gave it with the title beforehand, Abba, my father Chalafta, that's allowed. And the same thing with a Rebbe. If he says, Rebbe so-and-so, even though you're not allowed to call your Rebbe by his first name, but when you call him Rebbe so-and-so, so then it doesn't matter, so then it would be allowed. And therefore there's a whole question, by the way, how do you call up a father if you're a Gabi in a shul? How do you call up your father for an aliyah? And there's the different customs of how to do it. Some people have a minute, the Gabi himself will not call up his father. Somebody else does it. Other opinions say if you call up your father, you could say Yamed Avi Meiri, even with the name. Many places just say Yamed Avi Meiri without any names or things like that. Either way a person does it, it's okay. The shaila is though, when you're davening for somebody, let's say God forbid somebody's father is sick, so then you don't use titles when it comes to Misha Berach. When it comes to Misha Berach for somebody who's sick, God forbid, so you don't say it with titles. Chidah says you have to actually say the name of the person himself. So then you shouldn't say Ladaini Avi, because by Hashem there's nobody. Avi, you don't need Hashem to heal them. Okay, so now like this, Hashem says that when a person honors his father and mother, Hashem said, then it's considered as if I dwell amongst them, and they're honoring me also. Okay? And this is one of the few mitzvahs, by the way, that the Torah says, that you live long, even in the physical sense. So now there's two dinim. There's a part that says, Kabet esavicha v'esimecha, and there's another part that says, Ish imevaviv tiro. You have to have fear. Now fear doesn't mean that they're going to hit you and beat you up and punish you. We're talking about even for adults. So one pasuk says, Kabed esavicha v'esimecha, you have to honor them, and the halacha is going to do soon. We'll see what is the definition of kabed, honoring, and what is the definition of fear. Okay, now, so it says like this, but with another interesting point, Rashi says this in Chumash. Why does it say by kabed, it says avicha, then imecha? First father, then mother. By fear, the Torah says ish imay va'aviv tiro. First the mother, and then the father.
Natural tendency.
So the answer is, natural tendencies of a child is they give more honor to the mother than the father. The mother feeds him and takes him in and takes care of him. So over there the Torah asks, because the nature is to give the mother more kavod, so therefore, what does the Torah say first? Esavicha v'esimecha. You have to emphasize, don't forget about your father. Fear, the minhag is you fear a parent, a father, more than you fear the mother. So therefore, what does the Torah say? Ish imay va'aviv tiro. Don't forget that you have to also fear the mother. What?
So when you're writing like a vittel or font to all help, you don't write Avi Mori in your father's name?
The minig is you just write, when you write upon, you just write the names. In fact, the Mefarshim ask, interesting thing, by Yizkor, you say, Yizkor lekim es nishmas avi meiri, and imi meirasi. So over there, the Mefarshim ask, if l'chayr davening to Hashem, why are you saying avi meiri or imi meirasi? But the minig is, by Yizkor, you use that name also. Another interesting thing, Chabad is a custom different than most people. By Yizkor, most people use the father's name. When you say your father, you say his father's name. In Chabad, the custom is you use the mother's name for Yizkor.
Why is that, Rabbi, in general?
In general, B'chlal, why do you make a mishaberach, let's say for somebody who's sick, why do you use the mother's name? I'll tell you what it says in Sfarim. It sounds a little funny. It says in Sfarim because that you know for sure who the mother is. The mother is more definite than the father. So therefore, when you're davening for somebody's health, another reason is also because it comes from the mother. I mean, the child comes forth from the mother. So if you're talking Aliyah L'Teiro, which B'chal, you call up anyway. I mean, we said that by many of the Yekis, there's not even a minute to call up people by name. By many of the Yekis, by the Germans, there was a custom, before davening, everything was organized, to the second. So they would give, they would already know before the Kriya who's getting Kohen, Levi, Shlishi, Revi, Chamish, Shishi, Shvi, and Maf. So they gave you a card.
They're still doing it in the United States.
Well, they give you a card, Kohen, Levi, and then it would just say Yamed Kohen, Yamed Levi, Yamed Shlishi, Yamed Revi. They wouldn't even say the names. In America, they do say the names.
In Israel too.
I'm saying, but some of the Yekis is brought down that they used to do it that way. What?
When you say you're not supposed to refer to them by first name, so how are you supposed to refer to them?
No. You can't call them by their name. If somebody asks you what's your father's name, you're allowed to say what your father's name is because you're not calling him. You can't call him, like in America, they all call their parents by the first name basis.
What are you supposed to call him?
Oh?
Are you supposed
Say
to call
Mori.
him?
Abba, Tata, Daddy, Dad.
Mori.
Oh, so that's okay.
Yeah, but you're not calling their name. Their name, not their noun of who, not their position.
You call up and you say, hey, John.
Yeah, you're not allowed to call. But a lot of Americans, you should know, call the parents. Americans call the parents by the first name. You're not allowed to.
It's a sign of respect when you say, Avi Mori.
That's the din of Meira, by the way.
What if your father prefers it? What if your parent, mother or father prefers it? They say, please call him by my first name.
So there is a din in halacha that a parent is meichel, a parent who forgives on this covet, it's forgiven. Like for instance, we'll learn later, do you know technically if you're sitting down and your father walks into the room, you have to stand up? Halachically. Halachically is brought down in Shechanach and Hilchos Pesach that when you're doing haseba, reclining, so if it's a student in the presence of his Rebbe, so he needs to get permission from the Rebbe to do it. Otherwise, he's not allowed to do it. But by parents, poskim right, you can assume that the father lets you do it. And the din is the father is meichel. But even then, there's two things. Al pi din, according to halacha, if they say you can call me by my first name, you would be allowed to. But in Inyan, conceptually, it still shouldn't be done because it's not a sign of respect. Even though you wouldn't be obligated to, it's still not a sign of respect.
Especially in that chair.
Yeah.
That's like a no-brainer.
Well, that's coming now. So what does Meira mean? What does fear mean? Fear means, if he has a set place to daven, you can't stand in that place. If he has a designated place where he davens, you can't stand in that place. You can't say, let's say he has a set seat by the kitchen table or the dining room table in the house, you're not allowed to sit in a seat. That's all part of the mitzvah of fear, which is awe and respect. Awe and respect basically means you don't, it's more negative than positive. Kabed is more positive. Negative, Meira is Yira, like Dr. Rebbe says in Tanya. Ava is the source of all positive mitzvahs. Yira is the source of all negative mitzvahs. That's why we hold a Neichen L'Yira. But bottom line is you're not allowed to contradict his words. If your parent says something, father or mother, it's equal. You're not allowed to contradict them. You can't even say, if they're arguing with somebody, you can't say, yeah, it appears my father's right. Like, who are you to mix in? That's also disrespectful. And he says like this, the Gemara says, how far does fear of a parent go? So about the story, Dama ben Nassim, the famous Gemara in Kedushin. Now what? He was sitting at a banquet at the head table, all dressed up in royal garments, and he had a crazy mother, by the way. And his father and mother comes and rips off his clothing and hits him over the head and spits in his face. You shouldn't say a word. You shouldn't say a word, you shouldn't respond, you shouldn't yell at them, you shouldn't torture them, you can't get angry at them. You quiet, and you say, this is what Hashem wants. By the way, it says in Shulchan Aruch, though, an interesting din. If the parent rips your garments, so you can't yell or scream at them, you just have to accept it. But you can take it to Beis Din. You can take him to a Din Torah to pay for the garment that he ripped.
But that's not disrespectful.
What? Take him to court?
Yeah.
Listen, as Jews say, money is money. Family is family, and money is money. No, there's nothing, well, 1 second. There's nothing wrong halachically with a child halachically taking a parent to Din Torah. It's not disrespectful. You feel the parent owes you money, and which kid doesn't? Or let's say a parent is owed money by the kid. Okay?
Question.
What?
Say, going back to your own seat where a parent sits, what if a parent is passed on? Can you sit in?
Then you could sit in that chair. It's only when they're alive. No, you have to honor them afterwards also. But this, after they pass on, you're allowed to, halachically, you're allowed to sit in the chair.
Sit in their spot.
Yeah, but there's an interesting question. We still have time. But there's an interesting question, halacha. What happens if a parent comes to a child for Friday night dinner? Okay, you have a married kid, and the parent comes to the kid's house, to the child's house, to eat Friday night. So halachically, where does the parent sit? Now, usually, the son, who's the head of the household, sits at the head of the table.
Yeah.
So now that the parent comes to the house, al pidin, where should the parent sit? So in halach it says, by the way, the Aruch HaShulchan brings down that this din of not sitting in the seat is only in the father's house. But if he comes to the son can sit at the head of the table and the father sit next to it. But that's not what's done, by the way. In practice, what's done is the father sits at the head of the table. Father-in-law is a different din. Even then, it's a whole shaila in halacha, because you have to respect the father-in-law also. So we have, let's say, a case, a father and mother, let's say, come to their children for Shabbat, Friday night. So over there, they're more particular, even halachically, again, the son halachically considered the head of the table because it's his seat, and the father can sit next to him. But the custom is that you have the father sit at the head of the table. Father-in-law, different. I've seen different places, different minhagim that they do, some don't. If the father-in-law wants to sit at the head of the table, then you definitely let him sit at the head of the table. It's another interesting shayla. Let's say the father and mother come to a son's house. Okay, for Friday night dinner, it's just a classic example. And now this daughter-in-law is serving the soup, the fish, whatever it is. Does she serve her husband first, or does he serve his father first? Get the question? The question is very simple. She, halachically, is more bound to the husband than to the husband's father. Sure. She has to bidin, respect the husband more than the father. So, technically, she could serve the husband first, but if the husband has any brains whatsoever, he should always tell his wife to serve his father first, because that's protocol. The right way of doing it is that he should tell his wife to serve the father first, or her father. The same thing, by the way, is even more. What happens if it's her father at the table and the husband? So al pidin, her bound is to the husband first. But again, if anybody has a minimal amount of brains, which is very uncommon, no, common sense is very uncommon, so then the din is, the protocol is that he tells the wife to serve her father first. But if the guy, let's say, doesn't get along with his father-in-law, which could happen,
Then he let him serve.
somebody once came to the Rebbe, happened to be a relative of mine, who was working for his father-in-law in a Mosid, in a school. And his father-in-law was a difficult person. And he told the Rebbe, I can't work with my father-in-law. I can't get along with him and I can't work for him. So the Rebbe smiled at him and said, I got along and I worked for my father-in-law, who was the previous Rebbe. The Rebbe said to him, with a smile, I got along and worked with my father-in-law. Get along. But
Shneur was asking if the father tore the son's shirt. He could take him to basement, but what if the father was on the bottom of that shirt?
B'chlal, who does this shirt belong to?
Now it belongs to the kid. But
Who says it belongs to the kid? Who says it belongs to the kid?
You give someone something.
Excuse me, let me tell you the way it works. It's late. Let me tell you the way it works. In proper chinuch, let me tell you the way it's supposed to be. Everything in the house belongs to the father and mother. They're letting the kids use it. So there's no such thing as a kid saying, it's mine. There's no mine by kids in a house in proper Yiddish chinuch. The problem is today it doesn't work like that. Okay? But in Torah chinuch, it all belongs to the parents. The parents let the kids play with it. They let the kids wear it, but it's not theirs. You know, when the kid says to them, get out of my room. Since when is it the kid's room? It's the parents' room. You hear, guys? Hey. You hear? You hear? Shnei, you hear? It's not your room. It's your father's room. So that's it. Okay.